We Are Water, my latest novel, came about in a sort of a funny way, although it's not funny subject matter. I was on the local radio station promoting my little funny Christmas book called Wishin' and Hopin'. And the announcer said to me as we were wrapping up the interview, he said, "So what's new for Wally Lamb?" Well, I didn't know. I was still in recovery from the novel that I had written. And so I had to come up with an answer rather than saying "duh." I just sort of grabbed an answer out of the air, and because it was a local show, I said, "Well, maybe I'll write about the flood, the terrible flood back in 1963." Now this was Norwich, Connecticut, March of 1963. I was 12 years old, and at the northern part of the city, an earthen dam collapsed, and it unleashed millions of gallons of water and huge slabs of ice because the pond had been frozen over, and all of that ice and water went rushing downhill and destroyed everything in its path, and eventually killed several people. And that raging, very loud water was very close to where I grew up, my family home. And I remember walking down with my mom to see it going by. And then I remember being hungry to see the details in the newspaper the next day, the next couple of days. And a story that was really moving to me was about a woman who had lost her life. She was a young mom. She was about 24 years old, young husband, and their 3 children. The kids survived, as did the husband. The mother lost her life. They were trying to rescue their kids. They were 6, 3, and infant, and they were rescuing them. They got stuck in the middle of the water, and they were putting them up in a tree. And just as they got the 3rd kid up in the tree, the water came by, took the mother away, and she drowned. She was found the next day. And all those years, I remember that story. And I have, in fact, some of the old newspapers. This was the local paper. I believe it was the next day. And these are the 3 little boys who were rescued and brought to the hospital. And so I'm at the radio station. It is 2009. I'm talking about something that happened in 1963, and I mentioned these 3 little boys. Now, the next day, I get a call from their cousin. They're now middle-aged men. 2 of them still live in Connecticut. 1 lives in Texas. The oldest of those 3 boys, a guy named Tom Moody, who was 4, and he's the only one who remembers his mom, and vaguely he remembers the night of the flood. And so his cousin calls, and she said, "My cousin Tom has been preoccupied with this all his life, and he's an engineer, and he's very focused on the factual things. And would you like to talk to him about this proposed story?" And I said, "Oh yeah, sure." So Tom and I talked, and we emailed back and forth, and then he came back to the hometown, and I met him there, and he and his brothers and I, and a neighbor that was also involved that night, we walked the flood path, and we found the tree where they had been rescued. It was really moving. Now, Tom and I, because he decided he was going to write the factual story of what happened that night, and I, of course, was going to write a fictional version of it and then go off in all these different places like I usually do. But there's been a serendipity between Tom and me for the past 3 or 4 years when we were working on our individual projects. And I would connect him to people who remembered that night, and he would, of course, tell me about what he remembered. And the serendipity continued until just this past week, when I received on the same day the ARE of my novel, We Are Water, and in the mail I also got this book, which is Tom's book about the actual event that took his mother's life and changed the course of his life. So that's been a really amazing, an amazing journey for both of us, and we're really looking forward to hopefully reading together and doing a couple of events.